Hello, I'm professional attorney and very much amateur musician Scott Lesowitz, and a lot has happened in the past few days regarding the Giacomo Turra scandal. Of course, starting about a month ago, there were numerous YouTubers who put out expose videos regarding Giacomo ripping off guitar solos and songs from smaller social media guitarists and even selling tabs of their work. Now the big dogs, Rick Beato and Charles Berthoud, each put out videos about the Giacomo Tour scandal, and Giacomo's YouTube channel is either off of YouTube completely or is in hidden mode. So I'm going to cover 5 things and I'll put in chapters for those of you only interested in part of this. So first I'm going to react to Giacomo's YouTube channel being gone, for at least for now. Second, I'm going to react to parts of Rick's video. Then third, I'm going to react to parts of Charles's video. And fourth, I received a lot of comments to my prior video about Giacomo, about me not mentioning Giacomo selling tabs. So I'll talk about that. And then fifth, I received a lot of comments about why didn't I address European law in my last video about Giacomo. So I will address that here at the end. So I first emphasized I have no personal knowledge of any of what is being said about Giacomo. I'm just going off my understanding of what is being reported by others. So first, Giacomo's channel appears no longer to be on YouTube. I don't want to celebrate this yet because I don't know if YouTube kicked him off or he just put it into hidden mode. Here's the big thing. The guy still has his Instagram channel up. That's his main channel. And I looked back at Danny Sapko's first expose video, and I checked out the first 4 examples he gave of Giacomo, taking other people's songs. And I looked on Giacomo's Instagram, and unbelievably, all 4 of those first 4 examples, are still active on Giacomo's Instagram. So I stopped checking after 4 because I didn't want to keep, clicking on his video. Again, if Giacomo has a video up on his Instagram where he is infringing someone's copyright, that person can submit a DMCA takedown request through an online form to Instagram, and a copyright registration is not required to do that. As I talked about in my last video, the takedown notices can make a difference. And either through takedown notices or maybe if somebody will report him to Instagram, maybe Instagram will do something and remove the channel. So on to part 2, and that's Rick Beato's video. My comments here are less legal oriented than they will be with Charles Berthoud's video. So initially, Rick's thumbnail is brilliant. It looks like the high school principal caught Giacomo with cigarettes and he's in trouble now. So anyway, Rick talked about how Giacomo came to Rick for an interview that included Giacomo playing guitar. And this is what happened.
When Giacomo came in here, he was coming through town, and when he came in here and played, I realized that he couldn't play well enough to put the video out. And then I was like, oh, well, obviously all his videos were fake, but I knew that they were all play-alongs.
What I'm wondering most is, what was Giacomo thinking here? Did he really not know that Rick would realize that he is not an elite guitar player and is nowhere as good as his videos make him seem? And also, what was he thinking playing at NAMM, where a lot of the problems started? And I'm also wondering what happens, by the way, when Giacomo plays live. Does anyone know how he gets around his limitations playing during live shows? Is he like leaning on another guitarist? Is he doing like tricks or miming? I don't know. Or is he just, does it just suck? I'm wondering if, in addition to all the moral failures here, if Giacomo is a bit delusional about his abilities. So now let's move on to Charles's video. So here's the first clip from Charles's video I'm going to comment on.
I'm sure you want to hear about my personal experience with Giacomo since we did a collab together. Well, the first thing I want to make clear is that I had no idea about any of this madness before I agreed to collab with him. We did Slapocalypse a year ago and none of this stuff had become public. I've honestly never seen anything even remotely resembling this in my 10-year career of being a professional musician, and so I didn't think I had to do a full background check on the guy. Maybe that's something I'm gonna have to do in the future just to be safe.
So I want to elaborate on Charles' concern here. And that's it. If Charles collaborates with a musician for Charles's channel, and even if he has no idea that musician is ripping off someone else's song or solo, Charles likely would be liable for copyright infringement. Again, here's the last clip from Charles that I'm going to react to.
Now, at this point, some of you might be wondering, wasn't he just doing cover songs? Don't people do covers all the time? Well, no, these are not covers. A cover is your version of an existing song. So when I play a song like Barbie Girl and I play the vocal melody on bass and I add a crazy Baroque harpsichord section in the middle of it, that's a cover because I've changed up the instrumentation, I've added a new section to it, and just generally put my own spin on it. If you copy someone else's solo note for note, that's a transcription, not a cover.
Now, I want to give the caveat that I think Charles is a great musician, a great YouTuber, and I assume a great husband. But respectfully, I do want to point out here that Charles has this backwards. So taking a step back, speaking from a legal perspective, a cover song would mean a performance of someone else's song, either in a live performance or an audio-only recording under a compulsory license, which, by the way, Giacomo, still requires that you pay the person who you perform the song of. So anyway, a cover song must not change the original song too much, because if it does, then it's a derivative work, and permission is always needed for a derivative work. There's no compulsory license available for derivative works. Now, exactly how much change is too much can be tricky and unclear, but under American law, for something to be considered a cover song that can qualify for the compulsory license, the quote, the arrangement shall not change the basic melody or fundamental character of the work, end quote. Now, I will come back to this briefly when I talk about international law at the end, but my understanding is the US allows for compulsory licenses for cover songs to the maximum allowed under the major international copyright treaties. Okay, on to part four. Obviously, selling tabs of someone else's song or guitar solo, besides being morally reprehensible, is also copyright infringement. And frankly, even if you distribute tabs of someone else's song without charging for them, it's still copyright infringement. And by the way, you cannot distribute tabs or sheet music of someone else's work without their permission, even for free. Unless, of course, it's fair use, which no, in Giacomo's situation, no. All right, now to the final part of the video, and that is how international law impacts what is going on with Giacomo. So a lot of people commented on my prior video that, hey, you should have talked about European law because Giacomo's in Italy and a lot of the people who've come forward as victims are in Europe. And look, I mean, I acknowledge I have a bias towards US law, partly because I'm only an attorney based in the US. It's what I'm most familiar with. And, I think there also may have been some implications that, A, you're like a Merocentric guy like most Americans. But that said, when talking about YouTube or Instagram, US law is going to have a special place because those are both American platforms and their rules and procedures are mostly based on US copyright law. Also, while I don't practice law outside the United States, and so I'm not familiar with the exact nuances of every country's copyright law, the basic gist of copyright law is similar throughout the world. And that's because there are major international copyright treaties that virtually all countries are parties to. Like, no major country is going to allow the kind of behavior that has come out about Giacomo. So I know that sometimes you will hear of a major treaty and the United States will be one of the only countries not to be a signatory to the treaty. But as an example of a major copyright treaty, let's look at a map of the countries that have signed the Berne Convention. Yes, I know Eritrea is not a signatory, but that's still a lot of the world that is. And this takes us back to what I said earlier about cover songs. So under Article 12 of the Berne Convention, authors of literary or artistic works shall enjoy the exclusive right of authorizing adaptations, arrangements, and other alterations of their works. All right, with that, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Take care.